just form a fucking wall.
O'Neal deep in the post, lots of contact there. Oh, what a block by Wallace! What a jump ball!
Pistons down 4, 12-8, 7:38 to play in the first. A burst from Rodney, stuck into the rim. Count that baby and a foul. Reggie inside for Andre and a dynamite dunk.
Pistons fans, hello and welcome to another edition of the Palace of Pistons Podcast. It is episode number 100 here for Palace of Pistons. Glad again to be joined by Aaron Johnson and Ryan Paye. And boys, 100 episodes of the Palace of Pistons Podcast. Hey, it's right before the trade deadline. We have a lot of interesting stuff to get into, but happy 100, boys.
Yeah, hey, that's pretty awesome. Excited about what's happened with the podcast. Excited to be able to continue to do this podcast with you boys. It's been a lot of fun. Episode 100, we're bringing the heat per usual.
Yeah, and congratulations to Aaron, because you're the original member of the podcast.
Right.
So
and
congratulations on 100 to you, buddy.
Seriously, the first several were done by Aaron, and there were various guests and things, and then somewhere along the way, early on though, maybe it was in the 20s, we all came together to form this Palace of Pistons podcast, this crew. But we've got to dive into it, guys. A lot of interesting stuff. Some good, some not so good. And we're going to start with a report that comes from James Edwards of The Athletic. Came out on Friday that Luke Kennard has been, quote, made available in trade talks. What that reasoning is seems to still be up in the air, but Luke Kennard potentially on the move in the upcoming trade deadline.
Yeah, this is something that's kind of unexpected. I made a whole video breakdown about this on the Palace of Pistons YouTube page about Kennard being on the market. So if you're looking for some extensive thoughts on that from me, you can go check out that video. I'm going to keep my thoughts on that itself pretty short. I'm very surprised by it. It's not something I was anticipating. And it's kind of really come out of the blue here.
I don't think it was something anyone was anticipating. It is surprising. It is a little shocking. It's a little weird, but here we are.
But you got to think there's one of a few things that could be resulting in this, right? Either Luke doesn't want to be here, or there's a personnel problem, or the front office is saying, hey, he doesn't maybe fit. Maybe there's a two-guard they want to draft in June. Maybe they want to go in a different direction. So, to me, those are the conceivable ideas, thought process, if you will, that explain why Luke may be made available in trades. But, you know, I guess, do you guys feel that the Pistons should be entertaining a trade for Luke? I mean, we've talked about it before. We've had mixed reactions to it. I think we've all agreed that if the price was right, Luke was movable, but we've also gone through periods of time where Luke was labeled untouchable. So how do you guys feel about this, and what's the stance for Detroit of should they move him, and if so, at what price? Yeah,
I think that Kennard has been, for me, steadfast in belief that he's part of the future going forward. He's part of the core moving forward. So with the way I look at this, if the Pistons are trading Kennard, they have to be winning that trade. They have to be undeniably killing that trade, adding a big-time piece, whether it's, you know, a top pick or, he's putting a package for a top player, something along those lines. I hold Kennard in very high esteem. I think he absolutely fits the timeline of this core as he just turned 23 years old. You can't always have a roster of guys that are 18, 19, 20, 21. You're going to have some older guys in there at some point. And Kennard is not old. Again, just turned 23. He's a young player that has posted career highs across the board this season. 16 points, 4 assists, 3.5 rebounds per game. He's shot in 44% from the field, 40% from the three-point line. So he's efficient while he's taken on a bigger role this year, showcasing that he is more than just a shooter. He's a bona fide scorer who's grown immensely as a playmaker and distributor. He helped make the Pistons tick earlier on in the season when they were playing well and he was healthy. And once he went and got hurt, things really started to go off the deep end for the Pistons. So he had a huge impact on this team when he was healthy. And I get maybe there are some injury concerns with Kennard. He's missed, about 80 games over these last 2 seasons combined. And that's a little bit worrisome. But, he's getting a lot of time off here to get healthy. He's been given that opportunity. I think he is a player that you hold on to unless you are getting back something of absolute value where you are surefire coming away in a trade with a win in that deal. And it's just tough for me to see that happening the way the trade market has been talked about so far this offseason, or not this offseason, this trade season. And I just don't think it's going to happen. It doesn't sound like a plethora of trades are going to be made over this next week. So I don't know how much I buy into the Pistons being able to come away fleecing a team in a Kennard trade. So for me personally, the way I look at it is that they should be holding on to Luke Kennard and continuing to move forward with him as a foundational piece of their future, unless there is something going on that we don't know about that is the reasoning behind Kennard being on the market.
I have always been on the side of Luke Kennard is almost untouchable. He is a foundational piece. And my stance really doesn't change on that. I view Luke as a guy you move forward with Sekou and Bruce without question. For me, it's Sekou and Luke, and then everyone else is pretty expendable. But like you kind of touched on, Aaron, we don't know all the ins and outs of the front office and the franchise and the team and what's going on. But man, Luke is just someone who is growing and getting better and better. And I can't imagine trading him unless the return is very solid. It has to be. I mean, he's not untouchable, of course. He's as close to untouchable for me as it can get without being untouchable. But man, the return, if he is gonna be moved, better be quite the haul.
Is Luke extension eligible this offseason, restricted free agency?
No, I think that's next offseason.
I believe that's next offseason.
I don't
know.
know.
I'm saying with the question too, but
I'm not the kind of guy that follows all that kind of stuff very closely. But do you guys think half the concern or part of the concern is maybe
he's extension eligible this offseason? Bilateral knee tendonitis, extension eligible. Do you want to put big money into him? Maybe this is a time where you say, hey, we've got some concerns about the kid's knees. He's already not a tremendous athlete. I mean, maybe it is just let's put it out there and see what teams will bite on.
What are you willing to pay him if you extend him this offseason?
Gosh, I mean, I don't know what a even realistic number is. I think he's... God, I don't know. What do you range him at? What do you see his value at being?
I mean, it is a tough question because it kind of all depends on what do you value him as. Do you think he's a starter-level player long-term?
Right.
Do you think he's a 6-man? Do you think he's a 7-man?
I mean, is he like a $14, $15 million player?
I would say probably.
I have to believe he believes he is. I think, maybe that's the issue. You bring up a very, very interesting point, Brendan, on the money and the injury concern. Because maybe with the injury concern, being extension eligible, the front office doesn't see him worth as much as he thinks he's worth.
You're dumping the Andre, or you're dropping the Reggie contract. You might be dumping the Andre contract. Like, maybe you say, hey, you know what? We're not trying to put big money into
You're paying Christian Wood, whatever his value is.
Right.
And now
we were talking about that before the pod. I mean, is he a $7-8 million player? Are you paying him anything more than that? Like, are you going to dump 9, 10, 11 million into Christian Wood?
So when you
if Christian Wood's commanding 10, does Luke only command 14? Maybe he's 16, 17.
So just looking at some of the rookie scale extension in these past, the past year or so, looking at a couple names, is Karis LeVert 3 years, $52.5 million, and DeJounte Murray 4 years, $64 million. Kennard's probably in that price range, I would say.
Right.
I personally, Karis LeVert's only getting $52 million over 3 years. That's still good money, no doubt about it. But that's
What's
not...
that, almost 16 and a half or so?
That's just over 17.
17.
Yeah.
And is Kennard a better player than LeVert? So that probably puts Kennard at what? $16 million? Are you willing to pay Kennard $16 million? I am.
I think I am, but
I am too. But now with this whole trade talk, maybe the front office just isn't.
And if you're the front office and you know what it's like to spend money on injury-prone guys, do you want to lock up another
injury-prone
3-4 years of injury-prone guard? Like, I'm just saying.
Are we sure that he's an injury-prone player?
Maybe he's not, but knees are a tough thing to just get past. It's not like, you know what, he broke his wrist, he comes back, he's fine. Like, you just don't fix your knees. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not like a knee breaks, you recover, and you're good, and it was an accident. Like, this could be something that lingers for
forever.
Ever. Now, maybe it won't. Maybe
maybe it's nothing.
He gets his, he able to recover. He gets his knee, cleaned out, scope, whatever he's got to do. He can take his cortisone shots, and he's fine. But it just... That's a concern.
So Kennard and his agent come in the offseason and say, we want the Murray deal, 4 years, $64 million, or we're gonna play out the season and see what happens. What do you do?
I'm giving him the money. You guys, it's well established. I think everyone who listens is well aware. Big Luke Kennard guy.
Yep.
I think he's worth the money. I think he's a very solid player. He's a great piece to have going forward. I'm giving him the money. But I'm almost positive my mindset is different than the front office's.
Well, and that's fair. I think I'm in the same boat. If you get to that situation where, especially if you see Luke come back this season and play at an exceptional level, even if it's not crazy numbers, just like you can see physically he's able to perform at the level you need him to, yeah, you give him the money. But
I mean, after the trade deadline, Casey said that's when he plans on having him back. I saw that. That's what was put out there.
So maybe this is maybe you just kind of, you dangle like the low-hanging fruit. You go out and you see, hey, what will somebody just pay for him? What will somebody pay for him? And if it's not worth it, you don't got to move him. But, as Stan Van said, I think at one point, you answer every phone call. You take all the phone calls.
Hey, Mike Benajay for LeBron James.
Yeah.
That was the Stan Van Gundy trade idea.
So you have that phone call.
Yeah, he's getting that money if I'm the Detroit Pistons front office, and that's the situation I'm presented with in the offseason. Not that they have to extend him this summer. They can certainly play it out like what usually happens and go into his restricted free agency next offseason and go from there. That's usually what tends to happen. Mm-hmm. But if he comes in or the Pistons want to engage in extension talks, paying him $16 million a year, that is something that I'm more than willing to do because I look at the type of player Kennard is, and he is a very good basketball player. Like, what he brings offensively is something that this Pistons currently could very much use right now. And earlier in the season when he was on the court, we got to see Kennard fully unlocked, fully unleashed, and there were 30-point games, there were double-doubles, there were, super long-range three-pointers. There was all of it. And that's the kind of player you want on your roster.
Right.
And for $16 million, that's not a gross overpay by any stretch of the imagination. That's someone you lock up. He comes off that deal at, 27 years old? Then you can make a decision on, what his value is, how he's held up. But at 23...
when this franchise is clearly future-driven at this point.
You take that... I don't even know if I want to call it a chance because just he produces when he's on the court. Mm-hmm. You sign that contract.
Obviously Luke made available in trade talks, and the trade deadline's coming up this week. Detroit's been active in trade conversations. They've talked about Dre. They've talked about now Luke. Everybody but the Pistons have talked about Derrick Rose possibly being traded. And the big question is, what will the Pistons do, if anything? Will they make a move? So my question to you is, does Detroit make a move at the deadline? And if so, Who gets moved?
I am predicting that Derrick Rose will be traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. I think that Detroit gets back a pair of second-round picks. You got to remember that Philadelphia is a team that has not only first-round picks available, but they have a ton of second-round picks available. So those are assets that for them, they're very comfortable moving. And I know we saw the reports that Detroit was, they were requesting a first-round lottery-level pick for Derrick Rose. And I just don't think, one, that makes sense because a lottery team shouldn't be trading for Derrick Rose. And two, I don't think his value is necessarily that high. He's a good player, no doubt, but getting a lottery-level first-round pick is just not something that's going to happen.
Now, what if you throw Luke Kennard in with Derrick Rose? Do you get a lottery-level first-round pick?
Well, yeah, I would hope so. Christ.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying. Is that why Luke's available? To try to bring in another first-round pick?
I mean, maybe, but I think it was, James Edwards in his report mentioned that the Pistons were, could potentially put him in a deal with Andre Drummond if they were to move him.
Yeah.
So, just to go back to my Rose trade, my final trade construction looks like this. Derrick Rose and Kyrie Thomas being traded to the Sixers for Zaire Smith, Mike Scott, and 2 second-round picks. The Sixers have second-round picks this year, next year. They even own some of the Pistons' second-round picks, so the Pistons could be looking to get some of those back, but they have a ton of picks to work with. I'm not going to go into the exact second-round picks that the Pistons should get. That's not something that truly matters at this point in time. But getting a couple second-round picks back for Rose, you get a Zaire Smith, who's a young player that has some upside, and then Mike Scott's a holdover. It's just a salary. It just makes the trade work.
Well, Aaron, you went very in depth there. I don't mind. I mean, I was
I
not
don't mind
prepared
it.
for that. I didn't mind that at all. I think you're very spot on with your analysis of what Rose gets you back. Because yes, the Pistons are looking for that lottery level first round pick. I don't think his value is necessarily that high. I'm in agreement with Aaron there. So it's an interesting thought. That's a very solid trade, I feel, bringing in the assets and a couple second-round picks. Zaire Smith, taking a flyer on a young guy who has some upside. I mean, maybe, and then your filler. You need your filler in the trade,
Make the money work.
obviously. Now, someone who I absolutely don't think will be here after the trade deadline is Markieff Morris. I think the Pistons are very much looking to move on from him at this deadline. He is a player that can help a playoff team coming off their bench. When all the ruckus and hubbub and all of it came up, why isn't Sekou playing? Why is Sekou out? And every person in the know was seemingly saying, wait until after the trade deadline. He will be in the lineup again, playing a lot of minutes. That infers to me, I know we saw today, pre-deadline, he's back in the starting playing a lot, but Markieff Morris was out injured with his hip. So, he is someone I don't see sticking around. The Pistons are going to make that move. He's someone who can help a playoff team coming off their bench. All the people in the know, like I said, wait till after the deadline. Sekou will definitely be in the lineup. That infers to me, Markieff Morris definitely will be on the move. Teams are asking about him, and they should. He's playing solid basketball right now. He can help a contender.
Absolutely.
I don't have a trade put together and a team picked out like Aaron did with Rose, but I definitely believe that Markieff Morris will not be here post-deadline.
It's okay. It's okay that you don't have a trade put together, because guess what? I put one together for you. How about this?
What a guy.
How about this? The Pistons call the Clippers and say, look, you own our 2021 second-round pick. We would very much like that back. So we'll give you Markieff Morris, who's having a career year from outside the arc, shooting 41%, provides you with another big down low, which you need because you don't have enough serviceable bigs. You give us back that 2021 second-round pick, throw in Jerome Robinson, who you don't use, you don't need, and quite honestly probably isn't an NBA player, and we'll go home. How about that? Get that 2021 second-round pick back.
I'm not mad at
That's
it.
probably a what? That's probably what, a 30 to 40 pick, a 31 to 40 range pick?
Probably.
Yep.
I mean, probably it is.
So say, give us that, and you can have Markieff Morris.
I'm not mad at it. He's not going to fetch you some great deal.
No.
But if you can get an asset like that second-round pick back, I'm all for it.
So
I'm not mad at it.
So to kind of go along with, I agree 100% that Markieff will be gone. I still think Langston Galloway will get moved as well. Just a team looking for another wing and a guy that you could still move. So I'll see if Aaron's going to maybe try to construct a deal for Langston, or maybe a combined Markieff and Langston, even though that might be tough to pull off trying to match salaries, depending what you bring back. The other thing is this. I think if Derrick Rose or Andre Drummond get moved, it's going to be with Luke Kennard paired with them. Either Luke Kennard gets paired or none of them move. Because I think you've seen you're not going to be able to really get what you want for Dre. And is Detroit going to settle for that Philadelphia deal where you're bringing back some second-round picks for D. Rose? Maybe they will, but at the same time, they also could be saying, well, Bruce is still our guy, and we need another point guard, and we have D. Rose on a friendly deal. We can move D. Rose another time. We don't have to move him right now. So I think if one of them gets moved, you're going to see Luke attached in that deal to try to get you something a little more attractive back and push along your rebuild.
I don't know about Rose. You're not wrong. I don't know about him being included in Rose, but definitely with Andre. If they're going to move Andre, Luke Kennard would definitely be involved.
And that might have been even just a move of almost desperation, like, hey, Atlanta,
yeah, call them back up on the phone.
get that first-round pick out here, and we have a conversation. You know? Man, Trae Young, Luke Kennard, Andre Drummond. Okay, all right.
Andre Hunter with them?
Yeah, jeez.
That's a bit of a young team. That's exciting. I don't hate that at all.
So
For Atlanta. Atlanta.
Right. So it's like, interesting. Okay, maybe there's something there. So I don't know. I feel like Luke's going to be included if you move one of the big pieces. I think Markieff will go because he has to. You don't want him to play over Sekou. And there's just no spot for Langston, especially with the emergence of Svi and the way he's been playing.
Svi has to be getting the minutes at this point.
He's got to be getting the minutes.
He has to. He's playing so well. I'm enjoying Svi so much right now, and watching him play and watching him develop. He has to be the one getting the minutes. And he is. He is. But it has to continue down that road.
And he's doing it offensively and defensively. I mean, the guy's getting in passing lanes. He's pushing in transition. He's scoring at the rim. He's hitting outside shots. I mean, he's doing a little bit of everything. Not by mistake. He's playing in the Rising Stars game or whatever they're calling it.
The Rising Stars team game for the international team. Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's just a joy to watch. His development this season has been one of the bright spots.
Yes.
One of the very few bright spots.
Especially because early on, I was like, I'm still not sold on Svi. Like, I just don't. Yeah, I don't know. He's not doing anything for me. Like, is that a guy you're going to rely on in the second unit? Is that a guy that could start for you if you need somebody to start? But now, yes, I'm sold that Svi could be a part of this future. We talk about those young guys you keep around as you rebuild. Svi's a guy like, yeah, I like him. Let's keep him.
Aaron has finished the trade he so meticulously worked on. He was busting his butt over here, so let's see what he's got.
So you're calling up the Toronto Raptors, right? Toronto, they've been barraged with injuries this year. Norman Powell's had a great season, continues, though, to get hurt. And they're going to need some more depth on the wing. Some of the guys they signed in the offseason, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, a certain player by the name of Stanley Johnson, they haven't lived up to the hype.
The hype. Jeez Louise.
They need some more depth.
What hype? I just want to know what hype.
My hype. My hype, damn it. So they need some more depth, right? How about Langston Galloway? Only on the books for the rest of the season. Shoots, defends. He's a little bit small, but they like to play, 2-3 guard lineups anyway. So you say, listen, we'll give you Galloway to make salaries work, to make rosters work, we're going to have to throw in Tim Frazier. You send us back Hollis Jefferson, Patrick McCaw, and your 2020 second round pick, and you can get your upgrade and your depth on the wing. I don't love the trade personally, for the Raptors, honestly, but trying to find a team that has the money and can formulate a worthwhile trade to add Galloway isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do. Just because Galloway is kind of one-dimensional in the sense of he can score, shoot. He defends, adequately, but he's not known for it. So I thought this was a fine trade. You get a second-round pick out of it in a weak draft class. I mean, why not? You get to take a stab at a young player in the draft and see how it goes.
It's not a terrible trade. I don't know if I'm pulling the trigger on it, but it's definitely not the worst trade. I mean,
I get behind it. I don't know.
All the
hype.
There. It's there.
Does that trade bring
hype?
But
a Langston Galloway trade is not going to bring any hype.
No juice.
Just like a Markieff Morris trade is not going to bring any hype. Those are moves that just aren't going to bring any juice, but maybe are necessary moves to make. That Langston trade, it's there. You get the asset in the second round. You get to take a flyer. We'll see. I'm not mad at it. Like I said, I don't know if I'd pull the trigger on it, but it's there.
And we kind of go through and we talk about things we want to hit on during the podcast and things like that. And one of the topics I guess we have listed here is, are there any Pistons you'd prefer? Are there any Pistons that have been included in trade talks that you prefer not, leave the roster, or prefer not be moved? And I think we might all agree that Luke Kennard is that guy. But outside of Luke Kennard, is there a guy that's been rumored in trade talks that you'd prefer to see stay? D. Rose, Andre, Markieff, Langston. I'd say those probably are the big four guys. Then Luke would be the fifth. But those four guys, would you prefer that one of them stay on the roster, or are you completely on board with go? Because I think we all agree, Luke, we'd like to see him stay, and we'd like to see what he could do as long as he's healthy here in Detroit.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer, was Luke. I think one other guy, if I had to pick one, that I would prefer the Pistons hold on to is Markieff Morris. And that's really because he's on a very cheap contract. He has a player option for next season. And he's played pretty well to the point of, when you look at the rest of this roster, right now, they don't really have a four outside of Sekou. So whether, if they trade Markieff Morris, they're going to need to get back a power forward or open up a roster spot to add a power forward, because him and Sekou are really the only fours on the roster, unless you're going to play Tony Snell there or you're transitioning Christian Wood to play a power forward, which doesn't look like the case. So I guess for those reasons, I would say hold on to Markieff Morris. He's also a guy that he's played well enough this season. He shot the ball very well, 41% from beyond the arc, a career high from him in that regard. But he's played well. He's not had a bad effect on the locker room by any stretch of the imagination or anything like that. That's a guy that you can hold on to. And if you go into the offseason and let's say you draft a power forward, or you go into free agency and you sign a power forward or two that you want to give minutes to, Markieff Morris, for his contract, is going to be a guy that you can move, whether you move him in the offseason or you wait till wait until some point in the season next year. It just gives you an option, and I think holding on to him so he can play the rest of this season would be something that I would consider doing.
For me, personally, there really isn't anyone I'd want to hold on to. I mean, outside of Luke Kennard. But even then, if the front office and the franchise, they know something that we don't know, then so be it. But, I mean, other than that, it's not going to bother me to hold on or to get rid of Derrick Rose or Markieff Morris or Langston or Andre. As much as I enjoy watching Derrick Rose and as fun as he's been, and he's awesome, for reasons we've discussed on previous podcasts, the timing just doesn't fit. So my feelings would not be hurt if anyone on this team got moved, honestly, outside of Sekou. Not that they're looking to trade anyone and everyone on the team, but The only person that would really ruffle my feathers being traded, honestly, at this point, is Sekou.
I feel you. It's kind of like there's no one else. I mean, even Christian Wood that I enjoy watching play, and he could do some good things. Like, even watching the game versus Denver, where Detroit, big win. Why are we talking about selling at the deadline? They should be buying after that big W.
An overtime victory over one of the top teams in the West who may or may not have been playing without 3 or 4 of their top players. Bye.
So, I don't know why we're not buying. That's a big win, but,
Go get your Fred Van Vliet in the offseason, guys.
Yes. So, nonetheless, now that I've completely lost my train of thought on my own fault.
You're talking about trading Christian Wood.
Yeah. Christian Wood struggled defensively in that game. He was getting frustrated, too. I mean, we were watching it. He goes out, he hits a 3. I think he put the Pistons up 87-84, goes into a timeout. He goes to the bench, and he's mother effing himself. He's pissed because he had just gotten burned defensively. Hence why Thon played in overtime.
Yeah, that is why Thon was in.
So, it's like, yikes. But that's another discussion for another day.
Yeah, I was just giving my answer off of like the guys that we've talked about and heard about in trade rumors. It kind of is a different question if you're talking about just the roster in general, which is kind of where I would want to hold on to a Bruce Brown. I really think highly of Bruce Brown. I know there's some varying opinions on him, but I look at the game he had against Denver where he finished with 19 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists. The 3 ball was dropping for him, which it has consistently done so for him this season. I mean, he had 3 triples against Denver, and that's a guy that can play the 1 or the 2, is young. I really like him moving forward. That's a guy that kind of falls in the same boat for me with Luke Kennard. Unless you're getting back something, that's a big win for you, I'm not too interested in trading him. But my answer on Morris was mainly out of the guys that we've heard about in the trade talks, the trade rumors.
Last thing I want to get into here on the pod. It was really nice to see Sekou in that first half versus Denver get back into rhythm and be involved on the offensive end. 17 first half points. His final count, though, was 17. Really was deferring, not as active offensively in the second half. I mean, he was playing minutes. He was out on the floor, out through the fourth quarter and stuff, but just never put points on the board. He had a couple of passes that got tipped away, a couple he dropped. But it was nice to see in the first half a very assertive Sekou Doumbouya, and these talks of him going to the G League hopefully just wither away.
Yeah, definitely not a thing that needs to happen. I get that Dwayne Casey not playing him against Toronto to give him a day in game to just breathe, just watch the game and focus on watching and learning rather than having to be ready to go out and play. I can get that. I can get behind that. That's fine. But sending him down to the G League when you're as bad of a team as you are, that would just be a terrible decision. Let him struggle on the main roster. And when he's, obviously he's not always going to struggle because he goes out against Denver and puts up 17 in the first half and helped lead the Pistons back into the game in the first half.
Right.
So the talks of him going down to the G League are just, it's buffoonery.
It's
infuriating.
Not something, he is a guy that needs to be involved. You saw that today. For the past, week and a half or so that he's been struggling, 2 weeks, whatever it's been, he has been very passive, but the team hasn't been involving him in the slightest on the offense. Today, he was active, he was being involved, he was more ball dominant in a sense, and that is when Sekou thrives. He needs to be a part of it. It's not just him standing in the corner. That is not his game. That is not going to get him developed. That's not going to get his mind into the game. That's what he needs to be a part of the offense. Honestly, it has been infuriating the past 2 weeks watching him play, and it's not necessarily his fault because he has not been involved in the slightest by his teammates. They're basically playing 4-on-5 on offense the last 2 weeks with him in there because they don't even look at him.
Right?
That's what was so infuriating. And you saw today the change. He was involved more. His teammates got him involved, and Sekou was infinitely better. Now in the second half, you saw the younger player in him come out. He definitely deferred a lot more. And that'll come with time. Him taking over the game, him getting that confidence, that's going to continue to build over time. He's still the youngest player in the league. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is getting him involved. to make him
100%.
comfortable, to get him growing, and that is what needs to happen. And that's what happened in the first half.
If Sekou is involved and he's aggressive and assertive on offense, I mean, we've seen how good he can be. I mean, how talented the kid is. So you just have to hope, those G League conversations are done. That does not get brought up again because that's just idiotic, to say the least. And who knows? Maybe Sekou will lead Detroit on a charge back to relevance, and they'll buy at the deadline, and Sekou will play in the playoffs. Oh.
Stop it. Stop it.
Fight for the 8th seed.
Oh, my God.
Come on.
Detroit Pistons, the city where we fight for the 8th seed. Back-to-back years. That would be terrible. So, that being said, boys, anything else? I mean, it's kind of the deadline's upon us. We've talked the deadline. There's really not many other storylines to talk about with the team right now. It's just, that's kind of where we stand on things.
We've talked about the deadline for months because of how these trade talks have started. So we've been talking about this stuff since the beginning of January.
And it's finally upon us. Finally.
Next podcast is where things could potentially get crazy.
Or be dull because they did nothing.
I want to say buckle up, but it sounds like this trade deadline could be very boring.
Just make sure your seatbelt's accessible.
Just be ready. Just be ready. Just in case.
Just have a hand on it,
Yeah, just in case. That's all.
You don't got to buckle it in, though. I mean, it's a quick ride. So, with that being said, boys, happy 100. Pistons fans, thank you for all your support of the Palace of Pistons podcast. Of course, check out the website, palaceofpistons.com. You can check out all the platforms for the podcast, whether you're on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever. But make sure you like and rate, review, subscribe to the pod if you haven't already. Subscribe to that YouTube channel if you haven't already. And, hey, keep interacting with us. Let us know your thoughts going into the deadline. And hopefully we have some interesting stuff to get into next week. So that's it. Episode 100 in the books. We will see you after the NBA trade deadline next time here on the Palace of Pistons podcast.